ਸੋ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਨੇ ਹਰ ਵਾਰਡ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜੋ ਬਜਟ ਚਾਰਟਸ, ਕਾਫੀ ਚਾਰਟਸ ਵਿਦ देयर रेजिडेंट्स. So city of Brampton has arranged budget coffee charts with their residents in every ward. So they are getting the proposals, the inputs, the residents' involvement in this 2025 proposed budget by City of Brampton. Let's see what residents has to say, because we have learned that residents have many concerns in terms of security, policing, crime, inflation, grocery cost, and the housing crisis, the crime crisis, and the property tax raise. So ਜਿਹੜਾ property tax ਹੈ 2.9%, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿਟੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਲੋਐਸਟ ਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੰਕਰੀਜ਼ ਹੋਇਆ 2.9%, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਰੀਜਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਹੈ 5% ਪਲੱਸ. ਸੋ ਟੋਟਲ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ 8.4% ਦੇ ਅਪਰੋਕਸੀਮੇਟਲੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰਟੀ ਟੈਕਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਵਧੂਗਾ 2025 ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ. ਇਹਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟਸ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਟਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਵਾਰਡ 1 ਐਂਡ 5 ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰਸ ਔਰ ਮੇਅਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ. ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਬਾਕੀ ਵਾਰਡਸ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੈ, ਔਰ 30 ਜਨਵਰੀ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਏਗੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਟਾਫ ਸਾਰਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਔਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੇਂਜਸ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਹੋਗੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ.
Hi, my name is Mark Medeiros. I'm the Chief Budget Officer at the City of Brampton. I'm here at the coffee chat at Fandy Flame for wards 1 and 5. Today we heard from the residents major concerns with enforcement, with basement apartments, and with affordability. We've heard about the taxes and the pressure we're facing on inflation, similar to the pressures that all residents are facing with their groceries and their insurance bills. The city faces the same pressure. We started this budget process at a number much higher than 2.9%. And that is what we are proposing in this budget. We spent a significant amount of time sharpening our pencils to find every dollar we can save to get us down to the 2.9. However, we appreciate that with the region appeal, this is a large increase. In all of the engagements we've had thus far, we've heard that community safety, public safety, is one of the number one issues that residents are facing. The region appeal is including a significant increase of 300 police officers, and that is putting a pressure of 5.3% on the city. So we understand that it's a difficult year, but we feel that from what we've heard, the increases are well aligned with what the community is looking for. In terms of what we heard today, many of the questions were around bylaw enforcement, parking, basement apartments. We've had the largest increase in the history of the city of Brampton in enforcement in this budget. A 31% increase in enforcement, 26 new full-time enforcement officers. So we have heard the residents. We feel that this budget is well aligned with what we've heard, and this coffee chat has reinforced that, and we're happy to continue the engagement. Thank you.
We're having another coffee chat in Brampton. We're having them across the city to hear feedback from residents, and we want to make sure that our budget has the pulse of the city, that's reflective of the city's aspirations. So thank you to Councillor Vasanti and Santos, who co-chaired this event tonight, and looking forward to making sure we get this budget right for Bramptonians.
ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਗਿਆਨਪਾਲ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਬਜਟ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੈਮੀਨਾਰ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆਨਸਰ ਟਾਈਪ। ਮੇਅਰ ਬਰਾਊਨ ਵੀ ਆਏ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਪਾਲ ਵਸੈਂਤੇ ਰੀਜਨਲ ਕਾਉਂਸਲ, ਰਵੀਨਾ ਸੈਂਟੋਸ ਰੀਜਨਲ ਕਾਉਂਸਲ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੇਨ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਸੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਰਟੀ ਟੈਕਸ ਦਾ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਹੈ। ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਹ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੁਲਿਸਿੰਗ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਪੁਲਿਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੋਰ ਇਨਫੋਰਸਮੈਂਟ ਆਫਿਸਰ ਲਗਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਓਵਰ ਸਪੀਡਿੰਗ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ। ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਲਾਅ ਬਣੇ ਹੈ ਸੈਕੰਡ ਯੂਨਿਟ ਦੇ ਸਲਮ ਲੈਂਡਲੋਰਡ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਟਰਿਕ ਬਰਾਊਨ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਸਖਤ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਇਹ ਹੋਰ ਲਿਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ। ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਮੋਸ਼ਨ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਰ ਕਮਰੇ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਸਿਰ ਵੀ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਸਾਈਜ਼ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਰਹਿਣਗੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਬਜਟ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਟੈਕਸ ਲੱਗ ਰਹੇ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੀਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਟੈਕਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੱਗ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਅਗੇਂਸਟ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਵੀ ਉਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਮਿਲਣੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ।
Right. As a resident of Brampton, I am concerned about the budget, and I think times are very difficult for Bramptonians and all Canadians. And when the city increases budget like this, it puts homeowners in trouble. and we can't continue to pay and pay and pay. The usual thing is that you need to be able to get something back for what you're paying for. If I'm paying for a city, which we all want, but what am I getting in return? I think that's the primary questions residents want to ask. And in addition, we'll look at the impact of policing. We want to support our police officers. I truly want our police officers to be well equipped, but the timing of this budget increment, it's one that is going to be very pressing on our residents. Remember, there's the unfunded liability that all of us will be on the hook for in the millions of dollars. When you get a police officer, not only do you pay their annual income, you have to pay their pension too. And who pays that? We have to pay that. Now, will more police officers on the street solve our problems? No. If anybody understands something, with a high rate of auto theft, what are police officers saying? Go to insurance. And if we want to help our police officers, I think we have to rethink policing. We have to be able to address the issues that takes our police officers off their primary job, like homelessness, alcoholism, and all the other social things that are responsible for high crime rates. We ought to be able to do all of these things at the same time to be able to help our police officers. I don't think hiring more police officers at this particular time will be helpful to this city. I think we need to be able to joint issues. I don't know if it's the lowest. When I look at what I pay for the square footage of my home, it's not the lowest. If I'm paying that, I expect to get something out of the city. I expect to live in a clean city. I expect to live in a city where there isn't congestion. I expect to live in a city where there isn't much homelessness. So when somebody says, well, we're paying the lowest, it may come across as is the lowest, but what am I getting for what I'm paying for? You know, as much as we want to support our councillors, the mayor, our leaders in this city, we ought to be able to ask questions. So it's not low when you look at what I'm paying. I look at friends who live in the same square footage of home, either in Toronto, in Mississauga, and Oakville.
Hi everyone, thank you to everyone in Wards 1 and 5 who joined us for our budget chat here at Fan de Flame. And it was one of the first budget chats hosted by myself, Councillor Vicente, and the Mayor. Some of the top issues from our residents in Wards 1 and 5 are actually related to bylaw enforcement and making sure that we have beautiful, safe spaces in our neighborhoods. So I'm so happy that we implemented the RRL program dealing with slum landlords, because the majority of the questions this evening was about enforcing parking issues, property standards, garbage and refuse that's overflowing, and too many people living in a household or an illegal apartment unit. So that was one of the first things that we talked about. It took up a lot of time. We also talked about safety issues, so about the need for more police officers in order to deal with violent crime, auto thefts, break-and-enters, and even road safety. So some members of our budget chat this evening were talking about speeding and reckless driving as well. And so we're looking forward to supporting the police budget, where we're finally going to catch up with the number of police officers in order to deal with many of those issues.
2.9%. That is the increase that is being proposed by the City of Brampton's budget process, led by Mayor Brown and received by members of council. And when you take that 2.9%, which is a very low increase to the city's property tax rate, the lowest among all GTA municipalities. But then at the region appeal, we're doing a 5.5% increase. So when you combine the region's increase and the city's increase, it works out to about 8%, which is very substantial. But still, among municipalities in the GTA, not the high, among the lowest. But I would just say that the region appeal, we are very focused on ensuring that we prioritize safety. And with that increase that's coming from the region appeal, a large percentage of that increase is to pay for more policing in the region appeal, because you've told us that safety and making sure that Brampton is a safe community is an important priority. And so we're going to continue to work with our staff, with other members of council, not just at the city, but at the region, to ensure that when we increase your tax rates, we increase it for the priorities that are important to you, and we do it as competitively as possible because we know that folks are dealing with a lot of increases to the cost of living. And so we want to make sure that for us, as managers of the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel, we're being as competitive and as tight with your money as we possibly can be. I'm very pleased to be here at the location of our budget chat here in wards 1 and 5. And folks have been very clear that they want us to be competitive. They want us to make sure that we're making investments in bylaw enforcement and in community safety. And they want us to make sure that we're ensuring that communities remain viable and that people follow the bylaws and the rules that are in place. So we'll continue to make investments in bylaw. We're going to continue to make investments in community safety. We're going to continue to do everything that we can to make the City of Brampton the best place to live.
So we've been on a project over the last 5 years to catch up to the per capita average. In 1 to 2 years, in 2 years we'll be caught up, but it's been a painful process of catching up. This year, it's been controversial. We're adding 300 officers, but trust me, it's needed. How can Councillor Santos led the charge to declare a gender-based epidemic at the Region of Peel about the fact that we have close to 20,000 gender-based violence calls a year to the Peel Police. How can we declare an epidemic and then not send an officer to one of those calls? And so it's needed. I wish it wasn't needed. I wish we didn't have to deal with extortions and auto thefts and all this insidious violence, but we do. And those calls deserve an officer able to respond.
And, I just want to add that I still remember when we were first elected, we would get bombarded daily with emails asking us to defund the police. In other words, to reduce their funding. And so imagine when we speak with you on a daily basis, door to door, or at events like this, and safety is a top priority, the juxtaposition of those two different.
And Mayor Brown, you guys are doing a fabulous job, and I just think that we should give him a round of applause right now for. I've always said that Mayor Brown is the hardest working mayor in Brampton, and I'm being very serious. I'm not sarcastic in any way. He's the hardest working mayor we have, and I'm proud to be a part of the city and the growth. The question I want to ask is, we all know that Trump is about to be inaugurated in office, and he has been calling for us to be, the 51 state, and he has been reiterating about tariffs. So, peradventure, but you guys know how to crunch numbers. So let's say it does happen. What should we be preparing for?
Well, we certainly have an opinion. Councillor Santos, you've been all over the media on it. I am very nervous about what this means. I worry that it could spark a recession. Canada and the US have been historic trading partners. Just look at the businesses locally. Any manufacturing company locally that exports to the US, look at our auto sector to be very vulnerable. You look at Stellantis, where we have 3,000 associated auto jobs. This could be very punitive to Canada. I hope people around Trump will talk some sense into him on this. I hope this is a negotiating position, because it would be mutual destruction. Donald Trump thinks this will hurt Canada. It will hurt the US. He's talking about, he doesn't need our dairy. He doesn't need our softwood lumber. We have $300 million a year in dairy trade with the US. But they get $150 billion in oil and minerals from Canada. 97% of our oil exports are to the U.S. The reason that we have a trade surplus with the U.S. is because they get discounted Canadian oil products. And so it could potentially cause a recession in the U.S. as well. So hopefully sanity prevails. And I hope that we have articulate voices at the federal level that will point out to the new administration that Canada has always been one of the best friends in the world, and the last thing we need is to be in a fight with our neighbor.
How about increasing and fining to the extent the city can raise money and run efficiently the enforcement department, So that if you decide to violate our property standards from parking and all that, that money, you must pay for it. I believe the fee right now is so small. It's not a deterrence, and because it's not a deterrence, people's neighbors think they can violate it and nothing is going to happen. So my encouragement, I believe this would be something that most residents of Brampton can support, that the city, in order to help our enforcement department, and this can be another way of generating revenue to run itself. The enforcement department of this city should be able to generate its own revenue outside of the city budget based on various issues we have in our community. If this is what is required to uphold the standard of this city, I think the city ought to think about this. And most people will be biased into this. That's one part.
So, Idris, we got some good news for you. And Director Higgs can share the update, but we have expedited the entry of fines. So it used to be like you get a warning and then the fine. We're going straight to compliance, straight to fines. The fines have been increased. And on top of that, what would happen is someone would have an illegal unit, and to get the unit legalized, they'd have to do a number of things at the Committee of Adjustments. They'd have to remove tenants, and they'd have to apply. We skyrocketed the Committee of Adjustment fees for these secondary units. And Mark, do you remember the exact number? It went from something like, it went from like 600 to like 10,000 or something?
At least $5,000.
Yeah. So skyrocketing the fines, skyrocketing the compliance, the cost for these dangerous units. So what you're saying has happened, and you're going to see that reflected this year.
We, as residents, are really taxed. The economy is tough, things are tight, and I also think that while we're talking about the impact that residents or citizens will face when the Trump administration comes in, all of these are all the economics that would impact us. As much as we support the police officers to do their job, I don't think we can police our ways out of crime. I think we ought to be able to think about policing where we can address the other social issues that makes it very difficult, that takes away our police officers so that they can focus on the bad side. That's my aspect to this, because if we continue to hire as many police officers, there are unfunded liabilities that we have to deal with. I understand the per capita, the numbers you give is true, but it's true to the extent that even in cities that have excess police officers have still not been able to combat crime. An example is Chicago, in New York. As much as we respect our police officers, we believe they ought to be funded and be supported. I think it would be great for the city to think about other ways in addressing the petty crime and other things that takes our police officers away. The one with the intimate violence crime, that's important. That's what we need police officers. Everybody wants to be safe. With the current situations right now and the way the federal law is, it is difficult when you have all of these police officers when they still cannot able to arrest people and the criminals are out the next day. So as we look at this, in addition to increasing policing, if they cannot implement or do what they're supposed to do based on the federal laws, then it defeats the purpose of having more police officers. I hope we can rethink about this, because the taxes and the unfunded liability are going to be huge on taxpayers. That's all I have to say.
But my question is about priorities and spending, and that I know we started off about the slum landlords, but that's a problem. But it's a lesser problem, I think, than all the secondary units. And I know you touched on that. And this gentleman's question back there about increasing the fines is very good. We have 4 cars parked on lots that are meant for 2. We have so many cars parked on the roads, you can't go by because they're parking part of their cars on the roads, part of the cars on the sidewalk. And it's just a constant. So I know that you're hiring 34, you've hired 14. I think you need 114 to properly get this, because we had one guy parked 3 feet from the front, 5 feet from the back in front of a catwalk for 3 months. Couldn't get it done. I don't think 14 is going to do it. I don't think 34 is going to do the answer. So I think you need more to handle the extra units that are created through Brampton. And I know that you're bringing in the hospital, the new school. That's just more students coming in here, adding to the problem of the congestion that we have. I'll leave it with that.
So, a few things I want to say on what you raised. One, we know that excess cars is a symptom of these illegal units and sometimes legal secondary units. But sometimes a legal secondary unit will create a driveway that's not legal. And so we're going to try to tackle this with every tool we have. We've even radically changed we've changed the ability to widen driveways. We've also changed the fees to bring that driveway into compliance. So now someone would say they would widen their entire driveway, their entire lawn, it would just become a driveway, and the compliance fee was very small. Now it's very punitive. And so we're bringing in fines that are going to really hold these bad actors accountable. In terms of the student problem, we actually spoke out about a year and a half ago saying it's out of control, that the international student visa has become a cash cow for colleges. And at one point we had 80 colleges in Brampton. I bet you 3 or 4 of them were real. Now we're seeing literally 90% of them shut down because they can no longer utilize this cash cow of international visas. What our pitch was a year and a half ago to the federal government, to the federal immigration minister, was make sure if you're approving a visa, there's a plan for housing. And when the colleges heard the news that their numbers are being reduced by 75%, the good actors said, okay, we'll start building student housing. Now look at Algoma, they actually announced they're building student housing because now they have to build housing to match the visas. That's an advocacy campaign that started in Brampton, but made it all the way up to Ottawa, and the Minister of Immigration actually acted on a campaign that we started. So I do think all the old international student visas are still valid, but the new ones are not being issued. So this issue, if Brampton probably had 100,000 international students, we could see that reduce 75%. So it's going to become manageable. It's just year after year, now that the approvals have changed, every year the numbers are going down. So someone who started first year will be allowed to stay until their 4th year, but the new year is no longer being brought into the same number. And so there is hope on the horizon there. It's been a painful process for us